What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about God of War Ragnarok. Now, I know I talked about it before a few weeks ago, and it was not the most well-received video, but I do want to have a kind of interesting discussion on this one of, is this not actually God of War 2? Is this actually more of a God of War 1.5, which I know may be a little confusing. I think in order to do this, we have to kind of break down a few different things, and also what we maybe have even heard from insiders, one of which spoke at Kind of Funny, which may give us a hint as to this game. So really quickly, before I jump in, a lot of people that watch my videos are not actually subscribed to me. Totally cool, by the way. But if you aren't subscribed and you would want to subscribe, I would want you to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button right underneath the video. If you find out that you hate me later on, no worries. You can always unsub, okay? So again, subscribe now and you'll get tons more videos like this that may make people angry. I don't know. So look, God of War Ragnarok, I will say, I'll be the first one to say I was shocked. I mean, was it something I thought we would see at that PS5 event? Yes. In fact, I think I even predicted that it could be something. But with the way that God of War went, with the way that, like literally development time, the way that Horizon is, and we're going to break some of this stuff down very, very quickly and very, very soon, it is kind of odd that it is happening. And not even that it's happening. I shouldn't even say that it's happening so soon. Horizon came out February of 2017. We now have Horizon 2, Horizon Forbidden West, that comes out in 2021. 4 years. And to be quite honest, be quite frank with you guys, and I've said this before, I always assumed that would be the first major step built from the ground up for the PS5. Now they say that it is, but ultimately I don't know how much of a jump it's going to be from one to the other. Okay, I don't know if it's going to be like Uncharted 1 to Uncharted 2 or like Uncharted 3 to Uncharted 4, which was an enormous jump right from jumping consoles, but also a long gap of years in between them, which obviously helps that happen, okay? So we'll have to see. By the way, I'm a huge Horizon fan. The Horizon Forbidden West is my most anticipated game of all of these games. So I don't doubt that it's going to be good, but I am worried on if it's going to be an absolute big increase. Even if you disagree with me there, okay? It took them 4 years. It's by the time we're all done with this, it'll have taken them 4 years to do this, okay? And we still don't know fully how much of a jump it's going to be. You look at Spider-Man, Insomniac, Spider-Man 1, or the original, or the PS4 version, whatever you want to call it, 2018, September of 2018. 2 years later, here we go. We have Miles. Now, Miles is definitely a 1.5. In fact, they said this is like an Uncharted Lost Legacy, which Uncharted Lost Legacy started as a DLC and then became its own basic game. Now, it's short. It's only 6-7 hours, $40, not full price. You could consider it an Uncharted 4.5 if you want. But you know what I mean? It's a DLC that grew so big that it became a story. Okay? Now, that's another one. We don't know when Spider-Man 2 is going to release. There were a lot of rumors that it was going to release in 2021, fall of 2021. I still kind of believe it. I'm not sure if I believe it, though, but that's something. You look at God of War. God of War released April of 2018. Now, that is a full year and a couple months after Horizon, and we're going to have God of War Ragnarok around the same time as Horizon. Now, by the way, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. This is not really a discussion. I mean, I can say, I guess, generally, if this is a thing that maybe should be worrisome for the gaming industry going forward, but I'm not saying, getting a God of War in 2021 is the worst thing in the world. You know what I mean? I'm just so upset we're going to get another Game of the Year contender. It's no, God of War was 2018's, and I love all the God of Wars, actually, but 2018's was incredible. Ragnarok, I'm sure, will be extremely, extremely good. So I'm not arguing against getting it in 2021, but what I'm trying to figure out is it possible that they made a full-on God of War 2 to the quality level and the length. Now, length is tough because I'm not saying it needs to be as long as the first one in terms of, okay, if the first one took people 22 and a half hours, this one needs to take 20. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that, but it fully built for the PS5, really, really, advanced. Could they do that in 3.5 years? I think it's possible. We know the PS5 actually does speed up development time. This game was honestly, I think, because it's 2018 when they started it, probably built from the ground up for PS5, so I'm sure that helped them. So again, I'm not I'm not necessarily saying that this is impossible, that they couldn't have put this together in 3.5 years. But you look at Miles Morales, you even look at Uncharted Lost Legacy, and we listen to what some gaming insiders are saying in that Sony actually may be doing this with God of War. This actually may not be a God of War 2, but rather a God of War 1.5. Again, not DLC, but a DLC, maybe started it, you could think of it to start as DLC and then like balloon it up a little bit. You know what I mean? So again, is that necessarily a bad thing? No. It's just that if we're all getting, they have to be careful. That's, I think, my biggest thing here. They have to be careful how they do it because nobody's really confused as to what Miles Morales is. And to be honest with you, Ragnarok, I think, will have a very similar focus or like reason to happen, and they're not even bad. Like Miles Morales, firstly, is going to be really good. It's going to take a lot of steps into showing us what the PS5 can do for Spider-Man. But more importantly, even I guess from a story perspective, it's most likely going to lead directly into Spider-Man 2, which has a lot of benefits. And we get it sooner than we would get a Spider-Man 2. I mean, those are all absolutely strengths of the game. God of War Ragnarok, well, what could that do? Well, that could be a God of War 1.5. Maybe we play as like Atreus the entire time. Maybe it's not even we actually play as Kratos. Maybe we play as him, and then we'll play as Kratos again in God of War 2. Maybe it's only going to be a 8 to 10 or 12, so because it's different. God of War, I think, they're hard because Spider-Man's an open world game. God of War, kind of, but it was linear, but you could do different side missions. Obviously, you could even fight like the Valkyries and stuff like that. Say it's half the size of God of War. So let's just say that just to make it kind of clean. If it was half the size of God of War, they could get out faster, right? Because ultimately, maybe it takes them 5 years. Maybe it takes them longer to make a God of War 2. So we could be waiting a long time to get the next game, but instead they say, okay, well, we can do this game while making the next God of War. This game will be shorter, it'll be about half as long, but we can introduce all these new mechanics. We can introduce how the PS5 is going to revolutionize God of War, just like PS4 pushed it to a completely different level than what it was on PS3. Even though PS3 was already at a different level, God of War has always been one to push boundaries, especially technical boundaries, but with the 2018 God of War, obviously story, characters, a lot of other things, right? But they can do that. And also, the biggest thing is really the design. They even say Ragnarok is coming. Now, obviously, the game will probably be called God of War Ragnarok, but the question is, like, are they using it kind of in dual meanings where it's like maybe it's a little odd because if Ragnarok would be like God of War 2, like if Ragnarok literally happens in God of War 2, why'd you call this one God of War Ragnarok? So, I mean, you could probably argue, I think, well, obviously, you can always argue with what I say, by the way. There's no problem with that. But you could argue with what I'm saying by just saying that kind of does throw a wrench in all these things. But if they did a shorter version, they could lead the story directly up to when they would do God of War 2. To be quite honest with you, when I saw Ragnarok, the teaser for it, okay, I did think it could be there. I didn't think it would be 2021. I did think it would actually be 2022, and that's why they would which is weird because what they showed, how it was just Kratos' voice, couple words, and then the logo, I literally thought that's probably what we would have gotten. You know what I mean? If we had to predict that, I think that's what we would have gotten, but then I think it would have said 2022 or just no year at all, which would also indicate 2022. But instead they gave us 2021, which to me was that shocker, and I will be honest with you guys, the first thing I thought of is, could this actually be a God of War 1.5? Is this fully God of War 2? Which, by the way, I'm not going to debate the names. It's absolutely God of War 2. 2018's was God of War. It wasn't God of War 4. Also, people that say the numbered things, they forget, I guess, that Ascension ever happened, in which case, wouldn't that push all the numbers up? So I'm not going to argue the numbers with people. I don't really think there is a way of arguing that, by the way, but that is completely an aside. Now, again, for a case-by-case purpose, okay, if you look at a game case-by-case, I don't think it's inherently bad. I have no problem with Miles Morales doing this. I have no problem if God of War is actually doing this. What I will say is I would be slightly concerned for gaming in general if this becomes a kind of like how like games as a service, or like like constantly supporting your game for years and years and years, and then ultimately maybe not doing it or just sucking. You know how like maybe those things kind of start off like innocent enough, but then they kind of balloon and then everybody does it and then suddenly it's a big issue. That's what I see here. I think right now, if you do it for a couple select things, if it makes sense with what you're doing with the game franchise, I think it's fine. If we start getting every game franchise, though, saying, well, we could make a full-on second game or third game or fourth game or whatever, but instead, we'll still do that. We'll push that a little bit further, but we're going to give you half games that you'll still have to pay almost full price for, even though it's half the product. And again, I'm not saying like the quality of God of War Ragnarok will be half of God of War, but it is kind of interesting to think, even with Miles, which is $50, and I get it, prices went up, but the funny thing is, Miles is going to be, I would say, half, maybe less than half of what Spider-Man was in terms of content, and you're paying $50 for it when we all paid $60 for Spider-Man. Now, normally, Miles would normally be probably like $40. So it's just an interesting thing, especially with prices, because greedy companies, not even saying Sony, I'm saying like maybe EA, Ubisoft, Sony may do it, Microsoft may do it, they may all do it, but we got to be careful, because then you kind of get in the situation where, maybe they literally, if they're smaller games, they could be $30-$40, but then they may charge full price, because it's like, well, it's still a really solid game. It's just not the next game in the franchise. So we're going to charge you full price. Obviously, we want our money. You know what I mean? These are all things we have to keep in mind. I'm not saying this is happening with Ragnarok. I'm not saying I have a problem. Just to be very clear, I don't have a problem with Ragnarok. If it is a 1.5, if it's going to get us to 2, I have no problem with that. I even have no problem with paying full price for it, because I know the quality and the content will be there. Okay? I'm just saying in general, if they all start doing this, even if all Sony franchises start doing this, but then if imagine like an Assassin's Creed doing half games every like half year, maybe, because they do it, they try. Sometimes they do it yearly, sometimes they don't. I mean, think about what would happen there. You know what I mean? So we have to keep that all in mind when we talk about this stuff. I'm not worried here. I do think it's more likely than not that God of War Ragnarok, though, is not actually God of War 2, but rather a in-between game. But guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with me? Do you think that's actually the case? Or do you think that I'm just flat out wrong? Completely okay. Either way, let me know. As always, make sure you guys are subscribed to this YouTube channel, Podcast Now. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. And thank you all so much for watching. I truly, truly appreciate it. Obviously, as we get closer to Ragnarok, God of War, not the actual Ragnarok, I'll be covering it much, much more, okay? Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you all on the next one.